Hello, hello, and welcome to our webinar, Setting Up Kids and Teens for Success. I'm Heather Booth, the audio editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or if you need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions and will pass along other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Also, Booklist offers closed captioning on all of our live webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar mentioned above. From there, you can select Show or Hide Subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting Subtitle Settings. Last but not least, links to today's slide presentation and the title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Emma, Kristin, and Holly at OverDrive. Emma Dwyer earned an MA in English Literature from the University of Akron and has been at OverDrive 14. Emma is a training specialist at OverDrive, where she provides support to public library partners. Prior to joining the training team, Emma was an OverDrive content specialist, and she brings a great deal of library, publishing, and book knowledge to her current team. She enjoys reading British fiction, mystery, thriller, romance, and young adult. When Emma is not working, she enjoys reading, Love Island, coffee, and hanging out with her family. Kristin Milks wishes she could get paid to sit home and read. Seeing as that does not pay the bills, librarianship was a close second. After receiving her BA in English and French from Ohio University, Kristin got her MLS from Indiana University. She worked as an adult information services librarian at a library in northeastern Ohio before coming to OverDrive in 2015. Her reading tastes are eclectic, but she loves comic memoirs, cozy mysteries, smart romance, horror, and a lot of other subjects. Holly Cabot comes to OverDrive from Medina Library, where she was the adult acquisitions librarian for 4.5 years. She's worked in many Northeast Ohio public libraries since 2012 and now helps partners in the Midwest and Eastern Midwest territories with their digital collections. Thanks so much for being here, Emma, Kristin, and Holly. The floor is yours.
Next slide, please.
Thanks so much, Heather. So I'm Emma Dwyer, and today we're going to talk about some content for kids and teens. But first, a quick bit about OverDrive. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are the leading digital reading platform. We're a trusted partner to libraries, schools, colleges, and corporations in over 88 countries. We offer millions of titles to choose from in the OverDrive marketplace, and we have a staff of in-house librarians that can help you make the most of your digital library, such as my colleagues on this webinar, Kristin and Holly. We also have our award-winning reading app, Libby, that makes it super easy for readers to browse and borrow content from your public library or school. I'm going to hand it over quickly to Kristin for some helpful hints for navigating Marketplace before we dive into the content.
Thank you, Emma. This sale is going on now until September 30th, just so everyone knows. And I want to let everyone know that in order to shop the sale, you need a Marketplace login. If you don't have one and you are an OverDrive member, talk to your site administrator at your library or school or the OverDrive account manager you work with. Now let's get started on some hints on how to shop the sale. There are ads for our sale when you log into Marketplace. Oh, can you go back one slide, please? Thank you. But if you are looking for a more broken down set of lists, I highly suggest taking a look at the News tab and clicking on the Back to School sale. You'll then get the sale broken down like in the image on the left, showing sales by audience. You can shop your holds or books from this year and by several different genres and subjects. Also, our collection development tab in the Resource Center at resources.overdrive.com has a sales and promotions area that will link back to the sale and also show you any other sales that might be happening that month. Just a shout out for the collection development section of the Resource Center. Our staff librarians make lists that you can use to shop from or curate off of, so please peruse this section. Lastly, when you open a list or do a search in Marketplace, there will be a number of facets on the left-hand side of the screen that you can use to break down the results even further. For the sale, check on the sales status option. You can see that on the right side of the screen. Click on sale, and then the green apply button to see sale titles in your list. Next slide, please. We also want to mention that we did create a list of the books we'll be talking about here today, and we have this nice QR code. So if you want to get a full preview of what we're going to be talking about, go ahead and snap this. Otherwise, you will get a list of the books when we send out the recording for this as well. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Kristin. So this is Emma again, and we are here now to talk about young adult titles by trends. So on to the content. Next slide, please. So after a few years of realistic YA sort of reigning supreme, we're seeing a real return to genres for teen lit. So with the influence of things like Book Talk and Bookstagram, we're also seeing beloved backlist and exciting new releases getting equal attention. And so these are just a few trends that stand out for fall, and all of these titles are part of OverDrive's back to school sale, as Kristin mentioned, so you can get the most for your budget while you follow those trends and meet patron demand. So the first trend we have here is witches. It's going to be a very witchy autumn for both old and new books. I think people are ready for it. My first pick is The Girl of Hawthorne and Glass by Adon Girat-Poole. This is the first book of the Metamorphosis series. It follows Eli, a teenage assassin. Eli has been created by witches to hunt ghosts in the human realm. She's deadly and flawless and serves only one purpose. Until an assignment goes wrong and she starts to question everything she knows. Scared she'll be hunted and destroyed for her mistake with her latest mission, she seeks refuge with an odd group of humans and renegade witches. To free herself, Eli teams up with people she never expected to capture the elusive heart of the coven and choose a different path. The sequel, The Boy of Feather and Steel, is also on sale. We also have the audiobook of When We Were Magic by Sarah Gailey, narrated by Amanda Dolan. This story follows Alexis. She can always depend on two things, her magic and her friends. Alexis and her tight-knit group of friends are involved in a magical accident on prom night. It forces the group to cover up a murder and try to set things right. But when their first and second attempts at putting things back in order goes awry, they have to deal with the consequences of their failed spells, all while local officials try to investigate what happened. Alexis must grapple with all of this while hiding the fact that she's secretly in love with her best friend, Roya. This story features an inclusive cast of characters with varying gender identities, sexual orientations, and ethnicities. When We Were Magic has it all: friendship, fantastical elements, romance, murder, and dark humor. Next slide, please. So the next trend is dark academia. So when I think of fall, honestly, this immediately comes to mind with the return to school, the cooler temperatures, plaid, blazers, give me it all. I don't know why, but boarding school and prep school just scream autumn to me. And these books get you right in that mood. So first up is the audiobook Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This is narrated by Eileen Stevens and Jesse Valinsky. This was released in the fall of 2019. It's a YA thriller set at the Raxter School for Girls. The topic is a little bit on the nose. Described as a feminist Lord of the Flies, this story follows Hetty and her two best friends living in quarantine on their island boarding school. The talks began 18 months ago and slowly seeped into everything on the island, including the staff and students at the school, even the trees and the animals. Everything changes when Hetty's best friend, Bayet, goes missing from the island. In her quest to find her friend, everything Hetty understands about the island and the talks is turned upside down. This audiobook is a winner of an Audiophile Earphone Award, and it conveys a really good sense of tension and desperation with this thriller that's also part romance and part horror, all rolled into one. Next, we have The Castle School for Troubled Girls. This came out in March 2021 by Alyssa Scheinmel. This follows Moira. Her parents end up sending her to a remote all-girls boarding school in Maine as the result of behavior like skipping school, sneaking out to visit a cemetery, and getting a forbidden tattoo. The small boarding school, the Castle School, only has 12 students. All of them are troubled girls dealing with a wide range of issues, including kleptomania, depression, and addiction. Moira is less than thrilled to be sent away, but even more confused when they don't really seem to attend school and only have various therapy sessions with the elusive Dr. Prince. Even more mysterious, the castle seems to hold plenty of secrets, including a neighboring castle with 12 boys, a mirror to the girls' school, but with even less supervision. This story has mystery and drama, and readers will really relate to the real struggles these characters go through and to the diverse cast of characters. Next slide, please. The next trend that we're going to highlight some titles from is fairy tales, retellings, and mythology. The first title I want to bring to your attention, it has a gorgeous cover, is The Dark Tide by Alicia Jasinska. So this story is a really unique. To keep their island from sinking, Caldella's Witch Queen requires a male sacrifice every year. This year, Lena Kirk, our protagonist, is positive that her brother Finley is going to be the one sacrificed to the Witch Queen. Instead, a local boy, Thomas, is chosen, and Lena ends up sacrificing herself to spare him. He's a boy that she's harbored feelings for a long time. The Witch Queen, named Eva, is new to the role after her sister, the former Witch Queen, was tricked into sacrificing herself. Eva and Lena spend time together waiting for the full moon to complete the sacrifice and end up discovering that they have a lot in common based on their sense of duty, their love for their siblings, and their growing romantic feelings for one another. This is a dark enemies to lovers style fairy tale, great for high school aged readers. We also have Sing Me Forgotten by Jessica S. Olson. This is a gender swapped version of the classic Phantom of the Opera. Isda is a 17-year-old with a forbidden brand of magic that's punishable by death. Isda takes residence in the opera house after being saved at birth by the owner, Cyril. Isda hides in the shadows of the opera house and uses her brand of magic to manipulate the minds of the audience members to make sure they love the performances and keep the theater packed every night. Enter young man Emmerich as the opera's newest employee. He's got a magical voice that enchants Isda, and when she uses her magic to look into his memories, she discovers that he might know how to grant her the freedom she desperately desires. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to highlight some titles that fit the science fiction, space, fantasy theme. Just a quick call out to some key series on sale. We have some installments from Jennifer L. Armentrout's Harbinger series. You may have seen a renewed interest in Jennifer L. Armentrout over the last year with the popularity of a lot of her books. So this is a great time to stock up on some of the books from that really popular series. We also have all of the ebooks on sale from the Imperium trilogy. I think thanks to, again, Bookstagram and Book Talk, these YA fantasy authors are seeing a lot of renewed interest in their bodies of work. Both of these series are really great for readers of Sarah J. Maas and Shelby Mahurin. And the other book I wanted to give specific mention to here is The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. This is a really unique sci-fi space concept. 2 years after an invasion of Earth by the Ilori results in the deaths of a third of the world's population, we have Ellie Baker, who leads her own kind of rebellion by keeping a secret library. We love a library of any kind. The mathematical aliens that have taken over ban all things creative. They don't like art, books, music, but Ellie refuses to give up her contraband library. Enter Morris. He's a lab-created Ilori whose sole mission is to create a vaccine to end humanity. But unlike the other aliens, Morris feels his emotions deeply, and he has a secret love for human music. When he discovers Ellie's secret library, instead of turning her in for execution like he's meant to, they form a partnership to thwart Ilori leaders and escape across the country. This story is excellent for young readers with an interest in romantic science fiction or an interest in pop culture, or both. Janelle is Black and bisexual, and Morris has several non-binary friends and comrades. Next slide, please. So we've got killer thrillers. We have a lot of wonderful thrillers on sale for teens, and thriller is always a popular genre, I feel like, for this age group. So I'm just going to call attention quickly to one of these really great titles. We have 14 Ways to Die by Vincent Ralph. So the main character here is Jessica Simmons. She lost her mother 10 years ago as the first victim of the notorious serial killer, the Magpie Man. He's still at large, and his most recent victim is number 13. Jess is desperate to catch the killer, and she takes a unique approach to solving the crime. She's a contestant on the YouTube reality show, The Eye. It follows 5 teens in their daily lives. She calls upon her viewers to help her identify her mother's killer. The reliance on social media is timely, and the story maintains a really quick pace to a satisfactory conclusion. This is a particularly great pick for any reluctant teen readers that have an interest in thrillers or crime fiction. Next slide, please. And then lastly, I just wanted to give some call out to the audiobook titles that are part of this sale. The ACOTAR series, A Court of Thorns and Roses, the first 4 books of that series are part of the back to school sale. Are you sick of this series yet? Have you seen enough of it? Thanks to Book Talk and the Hulu adaptation of this series, there has just been a huge renewed interest for all of these titles. So you can get all of these audiobooks as part of the sale right now. We also have These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. She has a sequel to this book, Our Violent Ends, that will be out in November. So I anticipate a lot of renewed interest in this first part of the series leading up to the release of the sequel. This is a book that focuses on sort of a Romeo and Juliet story, but it's set in 1920s Shanghai. Chloe also has a really big following on social media, so I think her stories will appeal to a lot of readers across varying age groups and interests. I'm going to hand it back over to my colleague Kristin to talk about some juvenile titles by trend. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. So let's talk about some juvenile titles. And the first one I want to talk about is picture books, because it just doesn't feel like juvenile content without some picture books. First, we have Bruce's Big Storm by Ryan Higgins. This is part of a series all about Bruce, who is everyone's favorite grumpy bear. And in this story, he is back and his neighbors and friends need some help because there's a big storm coming. And even though he doesn't want to, he agrees that they can all stay in his house. And it turns out they are a much bigger help than he anticipated. Next is The Color Collector by Nicholas Solis. And this is a really sweet story about a girl who collects leaves and debris. A classmate asks her why she collects these things, and she shows him a mural she made that reminds her of her homeland. After that, we have Help Wanted, Must Love Books by Janet Sumner Johnson. This is a story about a girl whose father is just too busy to read her bedtime stories. So she puts out a Help Wanted ad. And none of the fairy tale creatures and characters who come are quite as good as her dad. The last picture book I'm going to talk about right now is Don't Push the Button by Bill Coder. And this is a really fun book I'm sure many of you have heard of or read. There's only one rule: don't push the button. Let's see if the kiddos can stop themselves from trying, though. Next slide, please. And as it's the beginning of September, I feel a need to talk about fall and spooky books for juvenile audiences. The first one is Scritch Scratch by Lindsay Curry, and this is a middle grade novel. It is on sale in both ebook and audiobook. This story takes place in Chicago and is about Claire, whose father runs a haunted Chicago bus tour. She tags along one night and notices a little boy in the back who disappears before the end of the tour. After she sees him, Claire starts hearing scratching around her house, and it seems that the little boy is following her. Is he a ghost? This chapter book is perfect for 9 to 12-year-olds who are looking for a great scare. Next, we have Hoodoo by Ronald L. Smith. Hoodoo Hatcher's family practices hoodoo, where he got his name from. It's a type of folk magic, but Hoodoo himself doesn't seem to have any magic in him, and he needs it. There's a stranger who came to town who has dark intentions, and Hoodoo is the only person who can stop him. This is a great book about magic and family and perfect for this season. Next is Emma Everyday, Crazy for Apples by C.L. Reed. This is part of a series of books that include sign language tutorials at the very end of it, and the main character is deaf. In this book, Emma and her best friend end up going to an apple orchard with her father, so it's perfect for the fall. The how-to series, like How to Catch a Turkey, is a fun and seasonal series where you can find several of these titles on sale right now. And this is a fun way for kids to create a trap in each of the books. So there's great maker potential in this series. The last book I want to talk about on here is The Very Last Leaf by Steph Wade. This is both a great social emotional learning book and a sweet fall read about being ready for the next big thing. I also do want to mention that The Very Last Leaf and Emma Everyday are read-along titles, meaning that not only will the children have the book in front of them, but there's also narration that they can turn on so the book can be read to them. Next slide, please. Next, I want to talk about all the fiction, and I couldn't narrow it down, so you guys are getting a lot on this slide. First, we have Ikinga by Nendia Korafor, and this is available in audio. It's about Namdi, whose father, the chief of police, was recently murdered. Namdi swears revenge on whoever did it, but he's only 12 and he has no power until he is gifted a magical object that enables him to have superpowers, but he has to use it for good. After that, we have Forest of Shadows by Camila Benko. This is a chapter book, and it is great for middle graders who love Frozen, which I'm sure a lot of them still do. Mary and the Trail of Tears is a middle grade chapter book that shows the journey of a Cherokee girl and her family as they are forcefully removed from their land and made to walk to a new territory. Absolutely Truly by Heather Vogel Frederick is available for sale in audiobook. This is part of the Pumpkin Falls mystery series, and it is one of my absolute favorite mystery series for middle graders. It's really sweet about a girl named Truly who has to move back to her father's hometown so that they can take over the family business. And she learns that she's really good at solving mysteries. Mulan Before the Sword by Grace Lynn, I'm sure you know Grace Lynn and have heard her name before, is available in ebook and audiobook. It's a story of Mulan before she saved the empire, about her going on a quest to save her little sister. Once Upon an Eid is available for sale as an audiobook. This is a short story collection by and about Muslims and their most joyful holiday of the year. This is great for middle grade readers. I'm sure everyone knows about The Breadwinner by Deborah Alice. This is a classic that many school children have to read, so make sure your library has a copy or two of this one. And it's perfect timing because it's on sale. And then we have Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed. This is a throwback novel to the 90s, and I know the 90s are hot again, so you're gonna wanna pick this one up. This one I read when I was a kid, and I loved the story about a young princess who doesn't want to be the proper woman her father envisions. So she takes matters into her own hand and becomes a dragon's princess. Of course, I have to mention that we have a number of Rick Riordan Presents titles on sale as well. I love these titles. They tie in really well with the YA trend of fairy tales, retellings, and mythology, as they are different takes on world mythology. So this is a great way to get kids interested in different cultures and different mythologies. They're so fun, and I'm sure I don't really have to say much at all about them. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about some nonfiction, starting off with biographies. The Boy Who Grew a Forest by Sophie Goles is the story of Jadid Payeng and how, as a young boy, he noticed his home in India had no trees or plant life, and thus no animals. So what did he do? He took matters into his own hands and he started planting and is still doing this work today. It's a really inspirational story. Warriors Don't Cry by Melba Patillo-Beals is available in audio. And this is the autobiography of Melba, one of the young women who helped integrate Little Rock's Central High. Next, we have a selection of makerspace and DIY titles, the first one being The Complete Baking Book for Young Chefs. This is by America's Test Kitchen, which is one of my favorite cooking shows. And I have a colleague who uses this book. She is an adult, but she uses it and says the recipes are fantastic. I have a nephew who uses the Complete Cooking Book for Young Chefs, and he's made a few of the dishes and they're also fantastic. So I highly recommend the baking book and the cooking book from America's Test Kitchen. The Ultimate Guide to Gardening is a great way to help kids get their hands dirty because we know that they are not getting their hands dirty enough. So although it might be a little bit later in the season for gardening, it's always great to teach kids the plant cycle and how we get our food to the table. And the last one from the DIY section is Recycled Science. Bring out your science genius with soda bottles, potato chip bags, and more. Why not use the things that you were going to throw away anyway to teach kids how to use science? The last section I have on here is some history and world culture. And we have Egyptian myths, which is a series. There are other books on sale that have other mythologies as well. This goes great with the Rick Riordan Presents titles. And also, to go with the Egyptian theme, I have Your Life as a Pharaoh in Ancient Egypt. This is also a great series. This one is about what everyday life as a pharaoh looks like, what you have to do, what you're doing at each hour of the day, who's in your retinue, if you get a tomb, what's going on there. It's a really fun series. There are also a number of books on sale about different Native American tribes. The one I have featured here is about Inuit Indians, but there are a number of other ones on sale as well. In American Plague, the true and terrifying story of the yellow fever epidemic of 1793. This might be a little too soon, but I felt like I had to include it in here because it also feels kind of relevant. So if you are looking for something to help kiddos understand that plagues and things like that have happened in the past, this might be a good one to pick up. And the last one I have on here is The Lemon Tree, an Arab, a Jew, and the Heart of the Middle East. This tells the story of a Palestinian and an Israeli who formed a friendship over a lemon tree. This was adapted for young readers from and it's a great way for kids to get an inside look into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through the eyes of friends on each side of the lines. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about social emotional learning. So the first book I have is Crying is Like the Rain by Heather Hawk Feinberg. This equates feelings to weather events. They come and go, and it's okay to feel how you're feeling in the moment. Next is Practicing Self-Care, and this is a book for kids to identify what self-care is and how they can care for their mental health. Ruby Finds a Worry is a picture book about a little girl who has something worrying her, and when she doesn't talk about it, it gets bigger and bigger. Once she tells a friend what's on her mind, it begins to shrink. I feel like I should read this picture book about once a week. Henry is Kind is part of a series with other titles like Sergio Sees the Good and Tayaja Uses the Think Test. This is a really nice one just to kind of go over how some kids work and use their feelings and emotions and just are great citizens. A Place for Pluto by Steph Wade is a picture book about planets, space, and finding a place for Pluto to fit in. This is a great book to remind kids that even though they might not feel like they fit in right now, they will find their place too, just like Pluto. All right, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to hand things over to Holly, who's going to talk about some more trending topics.
Great, thank you so much, Kristin. Great titles, Kristin and Emma, so far. I'm really excited about a lot of those kids' titles, especially the spooky books. Kristin, you know I love Halloween. Let's get the next slide rolling to kick off some more titles. These are some anti-racist reading titles that are part of our sale right now. These titles are important in facilitating discussions and better practices for all humans, especially if we want to empower kids and teens. Let's dig into some titles that will give everyone the insight and tools we need to support anti-racist efforts. So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Oluo is for sale as an audiobook right now. This book is an invaluable resource for us all. My neighbor let me borrow her copy during quarantine, and I read the whole thing in a day. Then I talked about it to anyone else that would listen. Turns out it's a great conversation starter and an accessible way to start getting on the right page about understanding racism. The book covers topics like intersectionality, affirmative action, and privilege, and how we are all a part of and affected by these things. I really believe books like this can help change the way each of us thinks about our part in society and ways we can do better. Ijeoma Oluo has received praise from other incredible and insightful women, such as Phoebe Robinson and Robin DiAngelo, author of White Fragility, who called her the smartest, most courageous and electrifying young writer on race relations today, the voice of our time. This is a great title for book clubs too, so make sure you have this audiobook in your collection. Stamped from the Beginning, A Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. Here we have another great anti-racist audiobook that's been in high demand from libraries. This is critical history that most of us never learn in school or otherwise, quite honestly. Thankfully, the author sheds some much needed light on how racism has been willfully constructed in this country to control power and policies of inequality, and then offers tools to make changes. He examines the lives of 5 major American intellectuals to illustrate the realities of the debates between assimilationists and segregationists, and between racists and anti-racists. Kendi's voice is unarguably a crucial one in the anti-racist literature canon, and this title a modern staple in nonfiction collections. Me and White Supremacy, Combat Racism, Change the World, and Become a Good Ancestor by Layla Saad. It's our 3rd audiobook in this list. This book offers people a real opportunity to examine their bias and to recognize white privilege and shortcomings in anti-racist work. A crucial step in doing better is awareness, and this resource asks us to just start there, to be honest with ourselves before digging into the real work. The project began online when the author created the hashtag #MeAndWhiteSupremacy, asking people to share their biased behavior. Thousands of people participated, and the book became an opportunity for the author to dive deeper into history, cultural context, and further resources to support social justice efforts. Layla Saad is also the host of the Good Ancestor podcast, where you can catch so many more great candid conversations. Our last title in this category is Bringing Up Race, How to Raise a Kind Child in a Prejudiced World by, by Oju Asika. This is definitely a title that's been top of mind for me lately, as everyone around me seems to be either pregnant or a new parent. The amount of American history I learned in my 20s that I was never exposed to before was alarming, and the education certainly continues. I am clearly very thrilled about these titles available for librarians and educators to share, and the prospect of the good they can do for all of us at any age. Books like this can help us fill in major gaps and find ways to ensure future generations have a full, honest picture, and that they develop an open-minded approach to race and inclusion. The mix of anecdotal content and practical tips included here make this book a must-have. Next slide, please. All right, we've got some 2021 teen releases, part of our back to school sale I would like to tell you about. I've handpicked these particular titles. So we'll start with The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. The ebook and the audiobook are included in our sale. This magical story brings us into a reality where every season the climate is controlled by a different group of witches. Most witches' powers are tied to the season in which they were born, but Clara, our protagonist, must control the atmosphere through all seasons. In the past, while learning to harness her powers, she caused the unintended deaths of her parents, so she's wary to take on the responsibility of protecting an Earth overrun and overpopulated by humans. Her powers could unite the witches in protecting the planet, or they could result in more destruction of those she loves. With growingly erratic and dangerous weather on the horizon, Clara begins training with a botanist named Sang, who could be the breaking point in her choice to lead or to give up her powers altogether. This twist of fantasy, coming of age, and what I like to call cli-fi, climate fiction, if you will have readers engaged to the end. She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan. This excellent queer, hate to love, fake dating romance gives us some of the best tropes for a modern YA pick. Scotty Zajac is having a rough moment. Her girlfriend dumped her, transferred schools, and now plays for the rival basketball team. In their first matchup, Scotty's team gets handily beat, and on her way home from the game, as if things couldn't get worse, she finds herself involved in a fender bender. Of course, her accident is with none other than the popular and sassy head cheerleader Irene, her arch rival. Scotty wants revenge, and Irene wants her car fixed, so the two strike up a bargain. Scotty will pay for the car damage if Irene publicly pretends to be her new girlfriend. Filled with well-developed three-dimensional characters full of heart, supported by a fun pop culture background, this wholesome rom-com is a slam dunk for any collection. This Poison Heart by Kaylin Barron is for sale as an ebook right now. Like The Nature of Witches, we have another magical protagonist with the power to control nature. Breezes can grow lush plant and flower blossoms from just a seed. When she and her mothers move into her deceased aunt's home in rural New York, she discovers an apothecary with all sorts of botanicals that only those touched with her family's magical lineage can conjure for potions. Strangers begin to come around asking for tinctures and elixirs, and Bree begins to think there may be some eerie secrets hidden in her family history and within the community, especially when a nefarious character shows up demanding a rare and dangerous elixir. This story has been described as Little Shop of Horrors meets Greek mythology sprinkled with some Black girl magic. Our last teen feature here is Love is a Revolution by Renee Watson. This is a coming-of-age story with a focus on finding yourself, honoring yourself, and ultimately loving yourself. Nala Robertson meets Ty Brown at an open mic night and is immediately enamored with him. Ty is really into activism and is busy organizing community events, which isn't exactly on Nala's summertime agenda. She does something we've probably all done as teenagers and tells some white lies to make it seem like the two have more things in common than they truly do. The wonderful personal growth and introspection that come from this flimsy plan are what really make the story profound. We get to see inspiring examples of young people caring for each other and their community, and Nala taking the right steps for herself. Next slide, please. All right, I will wrap up my titles with some adult 2021 features. These would be great additions to any collection for adults. There is a lot of crossover for young adults or high school students as well. My first title here is The Woman They Could Not Silence by Kate Moore. Elizabeth Packard, the subject and heroine of this story, was born in Massachusetts in 1816. She would grow up to become a housewife, mother of 6, and advocate for the legal rights of married women and mental health patients. One morning in 1860, Elizabeth was kidnapped, put on a train, and sent to the Jacksonville Insane Asylum by order of her husband, who claimed his wife seemed, quote, slightly insane. Elizabeth was an intelligent and outspoken woman whose religious views and opinions on slavery differed from those of her husband. Go figure. Confined for 3 years, she met other women in her ward with troublingly similar stories of oppression. Upon her release, Elizabeth was able to be declared legally sane by a judge, after which she went on to enact crucial reform for women and mental health patients. This story of 1800s girl power is sure to inspire. More girl power coming up with the Girl Explorers, the untold story of the globe-trotting women who trekked, flew, and fought their way around the world. Perfect for fans of the Radium Girls, The Woman Who Smashed Codes, and Rise of the Rocket Girls, this new title tells the story of the founding of the Society of Women Geographers, deemed not adapted to exploration by the president of the Explorers Club, which was obviously exclusive to men. An adventurous group of women defied the limited expectations imposed upon them. They paved the way for future scientists, artists, and writers, and this book highlights a lot of the historical context these early leaders struggled through. The narrative style may appeal to reluctant readers or be a fantastic gateway for those not typically inclined to nonfiction. My last title here is Becoming Trader Joe by Joe Cullum, who hopefully many of us know famous for his grocery stores. Any person who pioneers a business plan that includes Hawaiian shirts and a tiki-themed brand is surely worth taking advice from, if you ask me. This book explores the reasons for and the ways in which Joe Cullum, purveyor of world grocery goods, took his business in a different and refreshing direction than the big competitors. Along with tales of what proved to be the best investments and ideas for the beloved Trader Joe's store, the book offers an outline of sorts for business people to get creative and step outside the box. One of the most profound takeaways I learned about the company was their penchant to pay higher wages to employees to minimize turnover, and actual huge money suck for most companies. So way to go, Joe. And that wraps up my titles. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma, Holly, and Kristin. That was wonderful. At this point, if there are any questions in the audience, we'd be happy to field some questions. We have a little bit of time here. I was wondering, while we're waiting for the questions to filter in, if any of you could recommend any books or resources to help spur reading circulation, especially with teens, if you have any suggestions.
Hi, Heather. This is Emma. I can certainly answer that as we watch the Q&A. I think something that we touched on in the presentation is to target your content to teens by following the trends, getting creative with your digital book displays, and just having things that are eye-catching and interesting to them based on the things that they're seeing, on TikTok and Instagram, so that it's easy for them to find these titles.
That makes so much sense. I know that I have a couple teens here at the house who are always on TikTok and then making lists of books that they're interested in seeking out. So all three of you have a background in libraries. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about what's the process for how OverDrive recommends titles to libraries, how your library background feeds into that.
Hi, this is Kristin. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So what we do a lot is work with our library partners to help them pick out titles, going over collection development ideas, and then also curating. So taking, those YA trends and making them into digital bookshelves that can live on your OverDrive site, making it easier for patrons to find and check out materials. Our library backgrounds, I feel like, have helped us in that we all know what patrons have been through, what patrons are often looking for. And, we have a lot of sympathy for all you librarians out there.
So if any of the attendees or any of their colleagues at other libraries are not yet with OverDrive, is there another way to review the titles?
Yeah, I believe if you scan that QR code that's on the screen right now, actually, I'm sorry, this is the list. Thank you to Marketplace, but we can also send along a list that will open on overdrive.com to show you all of the titles we talked about today. I believe that list will also be going out with the recording at the end of this week.
All right, if there aren't any further questions, I think we can go on to the next slide. I want to thank all of our panelists again so much. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, the title list, a certificate of completion, and the video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones, like those that you see here. If you are not yet a subscriber, you can pair the print and reading experience with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com, and you can lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. Patron-friendly, librarian-approved, and free with a Booklist subscription, the Booklist Reader, Booklist's new digital-only magazine, having diverse reader's advisory recommendation for all ages, launches September 7th. To see and share the latest issue, visit booklistonline.com/reader-issues. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to our panelists and our sponsor, OverDrive. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.